All right, so the next topic we're going to talk a little bit about is this thing called IP version 6. And I think Microsoft started to spearhead this effort. And conveniently, they started to automatically assign IP version 6 addresses to Windows 2008 R2. And now in 2012 server, it automatically comes assigned with an IP version 6. Now, you don't have to use IP version 6. You can still use version 4. But conveniently, since Microsoft popped a bunch of money into this thing, they want to make sure that people start to use it, and eventually I think people will. The first exposure that I had was when I was at NASA using IP version 6. And at the time, I didn't really know what it was, and I had to do a little bit of research. But um, back at that time was probably about 7 or 8 years ago, and we had to make a secure link from NASA to the FBI um, to be able to try to clear people for background investigations. And so we set up a um, IPsec tunnel from a single node at NASA to a single node at the FBI, and we would pass data back and forth to do a quick check on people for the Homeland Security Presidential Directive version 12 to make sure that everybody who was doing business with the federal government was properly vetted. And that exposure really taught me a little bit about what Internet Protocol version 6 is. This particular protocol was developed in the mid 90s, and it uses 128 bits addresses. Remember, V4, not to be confused with B4, but V4, IPv4 that is, uses 32-bit. So whoever was the person who gave me the answer with that 4 billion addresses earlier, you could do the same math here for IP version 6. It will provide 2 to the 128th power addresses. So immediately you see that if we're going to run out of IP version 4 addresses, hey, wait a second, we got this thing sitting in the wings that is essentially 4 times as large, to the power of 4 times as large as the old one. And you write the version 6 addresses, it has 8 16-bit fields. They are written as 8 groups of 4 numbers in hexadecimal notation. And typically you see them separated by colons. You can replace any of the group with uh, of all the zeros by 2 colons. Instead of just putting all zeros, you can just you put 2 colons in there, and any leading zeros in a particular group would be dropped. So if you go in and you're looking at it and you see some that look a little goofy, if they have leading zeros or there are groups of all zeros, then you would see either a double colon or everything would be dropped completely. And it's quite interesting because the difference is not only the amount, the size of the specific number of hosts that we can now bring up, or the specific number of addresses, but it gives us a little bit more meat on the bone as well. We're able to craft the header within IP version 6. Um, it it helps to communicate a little bit better and be able to go from a certain type of traffic and a source address and a destination address, and it allows all the fields that have the extension headers in IP version 6 to flow properly and be able to have more security added in as well. So you can have new features that are introduced. They have these hop by hop options. You have routing options, fragmentation. You can do IPsec tunneling that I mentioned before. A whole bunch of interesting things that you can do here with IP version 6. And, this, one of the easiest things that we could do is just bring up a command prompt and go in and do an IP config. And immediately inside, or if you're using a Linux box, you can do if config. But either way, you can figure out what your IP address is, and if you are unable to do IP version 6, uh, then you would see that as well. Typically on the exam, we see one question that would favor IP version 6. It would either be something along the lines of, how many different addresses does IP version 6 have? And that would be 2 to the 128th. Or how many bits are in IP version 6? That would be 128. Or you could also say something like, you might actually see something on the exams that say IPsec is for what? I mean, I'm just being generic here because you could actually see something a little bit more specific, but you know that if a question about IPsec, that it's using typically IP version 6. So that's important to know this as well.